Is it fair that a wealthy Australian who has the capacity to be able to spend thousands of dollars buying a ticket to go to a political fundraiser, is it fair that person gets more access than any other person in the citizenry who cares about the future of their state or their country?
There's a lot of money washing around in Australian politics. Parties spent $418 million in the year leading up to the last federal election. The Coalition, $132 million. Clive Palmer, $123 million. Labor, $116 million. Independents, $21 million. Labor's top donors were mostly unions, while the Coalition's were mostly wealthy individuals.
That strikes me as fundamentally wrong, and it's worthy to do something about it.
The cure can be worse than the disease if you get it wrong.
Oh, of course it can. I mean, this is a policy that I announced prior to the last election. I made it clear that our objective was to get money out of politics writ large. We're going to do more to instill confidence amongst the community in the political process.
So the question then is how?
Yeah.
If you want to get money out of the political system, you have to replace it with public funding.
That's right.
Is this a way of entrenching your position at a time when the major party's vote is in decline?
Well, let's be clear about something from the outset. There are no shortage of people in the Labor Party in South Australia at the moment who do not want to see this policy introduced and let the fundraising continue.
Under Peter Malinauskas' proposal, private fundraising for politicians seeking re-election will be replaced by public funding. There are modest upfront public funds for new entrants, plus fundraising with strict donation limits. Then, once a new entrant is elected, the same rules apply. Public funding becomes the only method allowed.
I don't think anyone believes the status quo works. As Premier of the state, I necessarily have to spend time raising funds for my political party so we can compete at the next election. That's at the expense of work on policy, that's at the expense of a community town hall forum.
The proposed model means that a party like the Greens, who currently have 2 MPs, would get $752,000 in public funding per election cycle, while major parties like Labor would receive $5.6 million.
That is subject to change.
Sort of discrepancy?
But that's the sort of discrepancy that exists now.
Yeah, but there's at least the potential to do something about it, right?
Yes.
But under this, it's locked and loaded.
Yeah.
There's nothing they can do.
Well, there will be changes on the bill that was put out for public consultation on back of some of the concerns that you've raised.
The South Australian Council of Social Service and the Australian Democracy Network argue that new entrants to the political circus will face the burden of having to fundraise, while the established parties will not.
We have a gross imbalance between the power of incumbents to be able to fundraise, and under the system that we are putting forward, new entrants would be able to get access to public funding in a way they currently do not.
So what about unions?
Yes.
The Labor Party has a very close relationship with unions.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a structural relationship.
And it's one that I think is a good thing when it's at its best.
Okay, but under this situation, are unions allowed to?
No.
So you want to sever the relationship between the Labor Party and
unions? Unions would be able to affiliate to the Labor Party, but just not with a monetary transaction involved.
Big business has too much power. It's time to change the rules.
As it stands, the bill puts no limits on how much third parties, such as mining companies, unions and lobby groups like Get Up and Advance Australia, can spend on political ads. So is there any limit on what a third party like the unions can do?
That's certainly something that has come through loud and clear, and we are very open-minded to putting a limit on that level of third-party donations.
So you'd say to the unions, you're only allowed to spend X amount of money on political advertising?
Yeah, I think that's a model that should be contemplated.
If Peter Malinauskas gets his new bill passed by the South Australian Parliament, it'll likely get challenged all the way to our top court. Courts have tended to say donating politically is a form of political speech.
Yeah, there have been some decisions, both in the US and here, that make a donation an extension of one's ability to speak freely.
Yeah.
But the court has also, on plenty of other occasions, said that this is something that should be regulated.
This bill, at least as it stands, has quite a list of opponents. The Centre for Public Integrity, Australian Democracy Network, the Australia Institute, South Australian Council of Social Services.
I've met with those organisations personally. We have sought to engage with people who have made thoughtful contributions, such as the Centre for Public Integrity, about what we can do to get the balance right. And that's something we're very grateful for. We were the first place anywhere in the world to facilitate the secret ballot. We were the first place anywhere in the world to afford women the right to vote and run for Parliament. We are doing this because we believe it's the right thing to do, and we're going to give it a red-hot go.
Another Australian first from the Malinauskas government, which has already been adopted by the Prime Minister, is a plan to restrict younger teens from social media.
There's been discussion about 16 being the age in the federal parliament. Whether it be 14, 15 or 16, what we desperately want to see is that minimum age of people getting access to social media, because we definitively know it is doing young people harm.
One thing that's intriguing with this whole initiative is that just about no expert on social media seems to think it's a good idea.
But
B is not a great idea.
Well, we've got Simon Wilkes from Flinders University, who's a leading advocate for this type of change. Jonathan Haidt, who's a...
But he's a social scientist. He's not an expert on social media. So the people who are experts on that specific thing seem to line up and say, this is a bad idea and it also just cannot work.
Yeah, well, I don't agree with them. I don't think we can let the perfect get in the way of the good. And I think there is a need for change.
Won't they just get around it with VPNs?
Some kids will find ways to get around it. I mean, no shortage of kids drink underage, but that doesn't mean as a society we shouldn't establish standards that we know do have an impact, right? Do kids drink underage? Yes. Do less kids drink underage because we've got a law that says you can't do it to 18? Absolutely.
What is it about South Australia that seems to make it do things before anyone else?
Maybe the fact that we're a relatively smaller jurisdiction provides a degree of flexibility or ability to be nimble in a way that a bigger jurisdictions like New South Wales or the federal government can't.
Not everything catches on. Pie floaters, for example, never really caught on.
Yeah, I don't know why. They're actually pretty good.
Fascinating chat.
He's a fascinating guy with a really interesting agenda. And you can see the argument.
Yeah.
It's being really contested, and you can see that he's listening.
Yeah.
And he's very serious about this not being just about South Australia, I think, but being a model for everywhere if it works.
Yeah.
The question is, will it work? And I guess that's the argument the South Australian people will have to have now. It's fascinating.
How far will it go, do you think?
As in, will it get passed?
Yeah.
I think it might. I mean, the thing is, all the other parties have to have their say, and you can bet the parties that are disadvantaged will have a very big say. But his level of negotiation means that I think... and South Australia's the place to do it. Maybe it'll happen.
Free thinkers over there.